Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today I wanted to give my thoughts and opinions about Darktide patch 13 and everything that's been happening over the course of the past week with the relaunch of the game. I always do one of these a week after every update and streamline all the updated guides into it, which we built live on stream over the past week, so you can have a deep dive into how I do things instead of just accepting it at face value. But I also know a lot of people don't have time to watch all those VODs, so that's why this is here. And I also have an alternate YouTube channel where I post all my raw gameplay of me using the stuff and messing around. Ever since it came out, I've only really played auric maelstrom, so that's all you see in all of my clips, videos, and streams. And everything else you need is always linked down in the description and updated first in my community Discord. But before we get started, I want to thank you all again for the kind words, love, and generosity with all the channel members and Twitch subs the last week. Again, it's just been absolutely insane, and I just can't be grateful enough. So thank you so much. It was hard not having early access to anything, but we really made it work with the limited time we had this past week. But lighting this off, of course, we have to start with the Aquila drama. About a week ago, Sister Septimia said this in outraged Reddit, creating the pearl clutching meme, and whoever made this image is an absolute legend, and like everything, I have to stick my face on it because I think it's funny. So Catfish did follow this up by saying we will be getting a free gift, so that's great. Hopefully it's not just another nerfed helmet with a B on it. I miss when this thing used to be massive, but it is what it is. Moving on, we have to go with the most requested thing from you guys this week, some tips and tricks for everything Darktide. We went over all this stuff in the Ultimate Darktide Guide stream that has literally everything in it, from how damage is applied to weapon dump stats. So when I'm done formatting it, I'll launch it in Discord. But for now, we're going to start with the first and probably most important tip, which is to always play as a team and be sportsmanlike. Crazy things happen. If you lose, it's GG's and nice tries. Pre this update, I've only ever had like a handful of people rage in the hardest difficulties, and it was usually at themselves for making a mistake. And I had never even seen somebody troll an auric until the other night in the Sly Marbo video, so if you want to see that, it's linked. But if you're on some weird angsty console wars arc, just remember we all came from the sticks, so don't be an asshole. We just play the same game, and you should just enjoy it together. And maybe just as important as the first thing, staying together by recognizing the pace of your team is something you really need to do. Everyone has a coherency buff that together are all really strong, and they just don't apply when you're not in a certain radius of each other. Usually every group's pace is different because of all the different builds, and it is important to play together and work around that. But if you want to catch more wins, a balanced build and loadout to deal with every situation the game can throw at you is always going to make things go way smoother. And it's been a nightmare seeing people pull demon hosts for no reason, especially when you don't have the weapons to fight them. There's also no reward for doing them, and the meta before this was just to walk past them and skip them because they're annoying to fight. And even though we have like a ridiculous amount of power creep, I still don't think it's worth doing them basically ever unless they're just blocking a path altogether. Then we just have a speed run of some things I think are important, and prioritizing purple wounds over missing HP is usually really important. Unless it's martyrdom, then it really doesn't matter. And don't double tap ammo crates, it's just annoying. And if you see somebody get netted, it's the highest priority thing on the map to go just pull them out of the net. It takes half a second, like actually half a second. You just go tap on them, they're up, and then everything's okay. But make sure you prioritize that. It's really, really important to get people out of nets. And if someone is down and a poxburster is coming, push it first and then pick them up so they don't die and the rest of you don't take a ridiculous amount of damage. But if someone does die, falling back as far as you can sometimes lets you gimmick a respawn to be a lot closer instead of having to clear an entire section to go revive them. And a second part to falling back and regrouping is it's also the best way to force things into chokes. That way your team can deal with them better, and it makes things just so much easier to play methodically. It slows the game down and basically stops it from getting out of control. Then there's also audio cues for things that are behind you, which are sometimes just beeps now. I'm sure most people have heard them, but if you do hear something, just dodge and block to be safe. You can actually block things that are behind you. It just eats a lot more of your block bar, but I do also recommend stamina regen and block efficiency on Curios because of this. If you do run it, you gain a massive amount of melee tankiness with extra room for mistakes, and those two combined also let you tank out most monstrosities with almost no effort. And I still think most people should run +1 wound. The servers have never been the greatest, but they're a lot better this update, and especially a lot better than they were 2 weeks ago. But there's still some influence from the warp here and there that can randomly just get you killed. So if you're pubbing, 3 wounds is the safest until you have a ton of practice. And then other than that, if you're leveling, tier 3 missions is the most consistent way to gain EXP. And then if you're grinding for materials, just run it down in Quick Play Damnation. Auric Maelstrom doesn't give bonus plasteel or diamantine, it's just a challenge mode that gives extra gold. But the end game goal, I think, is to grind towards Auric because it's the most fun you can have on the game. So while you're trying to tier up difficulties, rebind your dodge and ping to easier access keys. Having dodge on spacebar for MKB is brutal. Mine's been on alt since launch because The most important thing in Darktide over builds, god-rolled weapons, anything else is fundamentals. You don't really need the best anything to do the hardest difficulty at all when you have enough practice. You never have, it's just always made things exponentially easier, and you should absolutely want to min-max to go do Auric Maelstrom. But all the gear in the world won't help you if you don't know how to move and dodge. Slide canceling is a really important part of the game that you need to learn, and if you're constantly losing melee fights to zombies, it's important to downgrade difficulties until you stop taking damage in melee. Low intensity is a great way for you to tier up safely and learn a proper progression curve. A good example would be like if you're just getting into Damnation, start on low intensity, then do normal when you get used to it, and then go to high intensity, and then move over to the Auric board where you start doing like high intensity shock troop gauntlet with different modifiers. And one last thing that got pay to win by my boy Vinny is to make sure you don't die. This really is the easiest way to win, and if you don't die, really, you didn't make any mistakes. But all the other stuff is linked in the Darktide scriptures, including the weapon dump stats. I know a lot of people were asking about this, but the safest way to go is to just dump mobility down to about 50%. This is the average for most weapons where you lose the extra dodge, and then for the rest of the stuff, just try and get between 70 and 80%. I will go more into it in the crafting video update, but most of the time this should be good enough, at least for now, because after spam buying a bunch of weapons, you'll probably end up in the it is what it is boat with me, where whatever you got ends up being good enough. But if you guys do think of any more important tips people should know, drop them down in the comments, and I'll probably just add them to the mega guide, and maybe I'll put your name beside it too. That's probably the best way to go about it. After that, I updated my recommended perks and blessings and did some slight tweaks to the builds with just a couple of talent changes here and there, but the text guides now also have my weapon combos on them too. So starting with Veteran, since we updated to the new Hotshot V2 build, a lot of you guys have been giving me tons of feedback on how much fun you're having with the build, and I love it too. It really gives me the old vet vibes for being able to control every situation the game can throw at you. And I've always loved the V6 Recon Lasgun just because of how cool it sounds. So it's great to see it have such an amazing build to bring out its true potential. So that's the first link in the description, and while you're down there, I'd appreciate it if you liked the video. But as for Commisar, I did change over to field improvisions. A few people sent me clips and I just had to check it out for myself, and it only took me one game to get full value out of it. The healing on the medkits gets way out of control when you combine it with the toughness regen, and the bonus grenades on ammo crates ends up coming in insanely clutch most of the time. Now, I did have to give attack speed up for this, and that feels terrible, but I think that field improvisions is a must-have after using it because it applies to everyone in your coherency radius that drops any of the kits. I also swapped the revive over to bonus toughness because even though I told myself just to use it, I ended up saving it too much to try and have clutch moments. Instead of just like buffing the Emperor's finest, I was just holding my ult for half the game. But I do know a lot of people love having the revive because it is insanely clutch when it has its special moment, but I definitely think it just gets a lot more value for me like this. Then my Zealot builds really didn't change that much, and I know a lot of people aren't feeling the old bolter, but I still think it's my favorite weapon combo for Executioner outside of the last pistol and the revolver. Then as support, I usually run the Thunder Hammer or Heavy Eviscerator and pair them with the Flamethrower just for pure RP value. It makes you feel like you're part of the Inquisition. That's really the best part about the whole thing. And my Ogryn build saw no changes since the last video. Berserker can still use any weapon, and that's why I love it so much. The versatility to choose whatever you want helps keep the game fresh for me, but after playing a bunch of games, I do think bleed needs to be reined in a little bit on the Ogryn. It can get a little out of control pretty fast, and I really would like to see their other keystones brought up. What was this one? Yeah, it's basically Feel No Pain that takes the lead over the other two by like a literal landslide, and I don't really want to see Feel No Pain like gutted. I just want to see the other two brought up to be something good, especially like Burst Limit Override, like the lucky number's 5. Why isn't the lucky number 7? Nurgle's number 7. We could be getting away with murder on the memes right now, but for some reason that's been overlooked. And then the other trait on it could double it to 14 or something. That way more than just the heavy stubbers can get value out of it. But moving on, point blank Ogryn with the fire damage on a Ripper gun kind of just clears the entire screen. I usually use this with the heavy stubber and just decided to try it like this, and it's completely ridiculous. So you also get to take the big nuke with it, and that's always a treat. But of course, Psyker has the Yandu fever dream that never ends, and Assails is really taking over. I ran a pre-made of 4 Assails, and everyone kind of fell asleep at the wheel halfway through the run. But if you do want an ethical Assails build, after testing a couple of things out, most of the issues come from the overpowered Souls talent, so it definitely needs a rework. We'll move on to the Voidstrike, and since it had extensive community feedback that I wasn't allowed to participate in, I'm sure this thing's just fine. To be honest, I think it was fine before the update. Now it's just a crazy artillery cannon, and I just want to be really clear about this. I don't want to see anything get nerfed to the point that it's unplayable. I love that most of the weapons, if not all of them, are playable at this stage of the game. I just want everything to be fun without removing yourself or other people from the game, and unfortunately, crafting 100% removes you from the gameplay. We always got to complain about this until it's fixed. The broken old man complaining arc will hopefully end one day, but there needs to be a way to buy a blessing. People are already starting to feel the effects of the crafting system, and I've literally seen the game die 3 times because of this. I don't want to see it happen again, so the easiest solution is just to let us pick a blessing for weekly tokens from Mr. Milkers himself. 10,000 was my arbitrary number before, but it actually seems like a pretty good number when you have multiple characters. There just needs to be some sort of guarantee that you'll get something, or you might end up like me where you're endlessly rolling heavy eviscerators and not getting bloodthirsty for, I think it was like 5 months or something, and about 140 rolls on stream. So it's overall just extremely unhealthy for the long term of the game. It just needs to be fixed. And of course, there needs to be a way to remove locks. This is another old suggestion, but a diamantine dump would be great for this. And again, arbitrary number, maybe 3k for the first lock, 6k for the second. That way there's some sort of investment into it. It's also not about god rolls. I don't know how this goes over some people's heads, but if fun can be min-maxed out of a game, it always will be. And this update was amazing. It added tons of replayability, choice, and diversity to all the classes. Now they just need to follow through on the rest of the game to really make it the perfect experience. I know a lot of you guys have been having a blast with the builds I posted the other day. It really did seem like Commisar took the lead on what you guys love the most, and I can't blame you. It's awesome. So let me know what else you love playing down in the comments. And once again, I have to thank you again for all the generosity and kind words. Times have been pretty tough, and I do feel comfortable talking about it now, but one of my friends was very sick, and I've been spending a lot of time with them just in case, because it kind of looked like I wasn't going to have them anymore. But they did finally take a turn for the better, thankfully. So your love and support really came at a time that, like, I didn't even know that I would need it at. So I couldn't be more grateful to all of you. The live streams were my escape just as much as yours. So thank you so much, and I wish you the best of luck out there.